Yeah, so well, let's start with the beginning. Jojo, when did you first get involved with soccer, and did you play any other sports growing up?
Yeah, I started playing soccer as early as I remember. I would say sometime maybe around 3, I joined like recreational soccer. I have two older sisters. They played as young as they could. And so I was always around the soccer field. And then when I was probably 3, I started playing for myself, kicking the ball around on little rec fields. And then when I was 6, I joined my first travel team. And I was playing U8 for a team called Delaware Rush at the time. And then when I was 9 or 10, I got scouted by the union and then joined the union when I was 10 or 11 full time. Um, and the academy started my U13 year.
What was that process like for you? I mean, you said you were 9, like for you and your family to
Yeah.
be like, hey, Philadelphia is interested in you. They got this very good academy. What was that process like that you remember at 9 years old?
Yeah. I remember it being very informal because my coach had some type of relationship connection with Phil Karn at the time, and so I got plugged in with him. Got invited out to training weekly for probably I don't know the first couple months playing up with actually Andy Rick's age group, and so I played with those guys on like a weekly invitation, and then after that, they pretty much had their tabs on me, put a team together to go to Portugal, my U12 year for pre-academy. And that was like my first official time being in a union team. Um, and then ever since, like once they have tabs on you, they just keep you in the system, keep their eye on you and whatever. And then when it came time for the academy to officially start U13 year, we had tryouts and then I was in. But the time leading up to that tryout was rather informal. And I would train with my team, play with my team, and then get invited to trainings whenever I could.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of moments that stand out to you during your time with the academy. But if you had to pick maybe just a couple, what were some of your favorite moments?
It's a good question. I think that trip to Portugal is probably one of my favorite. Um, I would also say one of the most influential because a big international trip when you're 12 years old has a big impact on you. A lot of eyes on you, a lot of opportunity. Um, and so I would say playing against those international teams definitely gave me a different perspective. Um, Also to the scale that soccer is in the world. Like when you're 12, all you think about is showing up on Saturday mornings to your local field. Um, but this time we are flown across the country, across the world, playing against top teams. And so it's just, I think that was something really cool to look back on. And then I think there's a lot of other individual games and moments that stand out, but the GA Cup, when we won it, that was a pretty cool time, even though I wasn't in the spot that I wanted to be coming off of injury and stuff, but being a part of the team through that, seeing how heated the games get against Flamengo with the fights, all that stuff. It was pretty electric. And something definitely to remember. And winning in PKs was pretty cool. Um, and yeah, I think honestly, I have so many memories, but those are some of the bigger ones.
Flipping to the academic side real quick.
Yeah.
What would you say academically the academy prepared you for the college life now at University of Delaware?
Yeah. I'm not sure if you guys know this, but I was the only one to not go through YSC Academy.
Oh,
Um, yeah. So I my mom actually homeschooled me when I was younger. And it worked going into middle school while I was driving an hour each way to and from practice. And it's probably the only way that I could do it, fifth and sixth grade, before like we were old enough to join YSC. So it worked out very well. And then I think it was probably sixth, seventh grade was like the first time I had the opportunity to join YSC. Did the tours, talked with the guys there, the coaches, and figured out that keeping on with like my individualized academics that my mom had for me would be plausible so long as I showed up to team trainings, team meetings, and team games on time. And that was something that I could do. And so kept going and then delayed the idea of going to YSC till later and later. Then high school came. It's probably a little bit more of a reassessing period. And yet again, pushed it off because I could do my own schooling. And then junior and senior year became heavily focused in what's called dual enrollment classes. And so my credits were credited to both high school classes and college classes. So I came in with a little bit north of 30 credits, which allowed me to get out or to be excused from taking history, science, math, and writing classes here at Delaware, which allows me to be more major focused and honestly makes more of an enjoyable academic time here. Um,
Yeah,
Yeah,
as a former NCAA coach, I understand completely where you're
yeah,
going with that.
for
And
sure. I was an
Jillian's a
NCAA
teacher.
swimmer. I know. Yeah, it's a lot. And when you can get to those, core classes and ones that actually go towards your major, that can be huge, especially when you have
yeah,
such schedule that you have as an athlete. So,
yeah.
but yeah, it sounds like you were pretty well prepared for that transition. And just going through that recruiting process, what led you to the decision to attend University of Delaware?
Long story short, I think is the coaches. I had a pretty interesting recruiting process because I was coming out of an ACL injury. And so I was sidelined for most of what would be considered like your key recruiting period. Um, and then coming out, well, I actually got back spring of my junior year, played a couple games, was not quite in the spot that I wanted to be, slightly re-injured not my ACL, but the stuff around my knee. And so we went back, spent the next couple weeks, months, really stabilizing it, being a little bit more aggressive in my rehab, and then came back in the fall of my senior year. And that's when my recruiting really kicked in. And I talked to different schools, got my eyes looking far, close. Um, and then I had a period after a tournament in California. And long story short, wanted Delaware because I got sold by Tommy, and what they want to do with this program. And the fact that it was in my backyard was, I don't know, it was a really beneficial factor, and something that I've come to really be thankful for. Um, but in that recruiting period, like hearing what Tommy wanted from this program, the standard at which he drove the program, coaches, everything. It was just very easy to buy into and see where I would fit in it. Um, and now walking it out has been a lot of fun.
Just curious, did you speak with Jamie Cleland and John Shear about their time at University of Delaware, since there's those connections?
Yeah, so like I said, I kind of had two recruiting periods before I got injured in the beginning, and during that time, I worked heavily with Jamie, and he was actually still the goalie coach here as I was getting recruited. Um, and then as it came time for the fall of my senior year, he got through that season, and then he began transitioning out as I was coming to being committed at Delaware. And so, yes, I worked tightly with Jamie. And then I have talked to John about his time at Delaware a little bit. But yeah, it's cool to have so many connections between the Union and Delaware.
Uh, For a second, you talked about how Coach McNamee sold you on the program. What was that vision that really stood out to you? Because a lot of times coaches will say, "You come here, here's what we're going to do." What really stood out to you?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think honestly the way Tommy carried himself and communicated was a key factor. He carried himself top notch and honestly second to none. And so that was very clear. And to see the standard at which he carried himself was easy to see that what he would verbalize about the program that he was building would by no means be anything but that standard at which he carried himself. And so as he described this program, which is a pretty young program for soccer, and something that this is his first year of having a team full of his recruits, a team full of his recruits. Um, I'm sorry, I'm going to go back a little bit. I lost my thought. Um, so I honestly just lost it.
You're talking about a
Um,
team full of his recruits.
yeah. And so this, yeah, it's a young program. And so now it's just a team full of his recruits. And so you can start to see over the past 4 years the turnaround of the team. And he was verbalizing while I was getting recruited that he really wanted to make this program into something more than just mid-tier D1 team. And he wanted a standard of excellence in every area. Um, and he he said that a goalkeeper would be what was needed to make that happen. And so I think he communicated a lot of key factors about what he needed to see turn around in this program, um, indicators of what's been turning around since he joined, things that he talked about from his time at Michigan that he liked, things that he talked about at Michigan that he honestly didn't like. And he showed that he had a really good, like, he he showed that he knew what he wanted because he's seen the good and bad of big schools, and he knew as he's building this program which directions he wanted to take in order to be best of the best.
And you guys, as a team, had some really incredible moments this year.
Yeah.
For you personally, as a freshman, what were the biggest standout moments for you this year? Because there's a couple games where you played University of Kansas City, I believe, the last game of the regular season. That was a back and forth match, and then there was a couple other matches early in the season where you personally made a mark on the team, and you had some good
Yeah.
talent. So, what were some of the highlights?
I think honestly, there were a lot of them, and each of the highlights feel as though they built upon itself because coming into the season, I honestly didn't know, I didn't have much of an expectation, right? And I don't think the team had too much of an expectation, other than like, we're going to go out and do the best that we can in every area. And so as we played teams like Penn early in the season, where we honestly didn't know where we would match up against a team who has been pretty decent over the past number of years, getting a win against them, just like that was a really fun game because we had a lot to prove, and then we proved that there was something solid to this team, that we had a backbone. And then going into the next couple games, starting with our first conference game, we had some big home games versus UMass. That was a fun one because once again, this team was a Sweet 16 team in the past couple of years. Like, they're solid. We didn't know how we would line up, but then defeating them. Um, and to be able to do it on your home field every single game this season was honestly a highlight every single time because we're like, all right, let's just go do it again. Let's just have the game that we had last time, and let's replicate our game style, do it better and better. And then we would do it, and each time would become a new highlight in its own way, right? And then honestly, I feel as though we were left off a little bit in our games versus Kansas City, both of them the end of the year, because it didn't feel as though we played like ourselves, like we would have on our home field, which is slightly aggravating. Um, but I think that's what we learned from, and that's what's going to change a lot this year, hopefully, because this team is not like we have no expectations going into the year, but now we have a benchmark and we have something to prove because it's harder to do 2 years in a row than it is just getting the ball rolling.
Yeah, and then for you personally, just making that transition to college, just what do you think's been the most, like, what's been the biggest adjustment going from playing at that academy level and being a high school student going to college for you?
Yeah. honestly, it's been a pretty seamless transition. And I wouldn't say there's any one thing that really changed, at least from a soccer perspective, because I feel as though the academy really did prepare me well for that. Um, and the coaches like explained everything. And coming into Delaware, like the Delaware coaches really equipped me with every possible means to do well as soon as I got onto the field. Um, with that being said, the college game is different in its own way. And it does present a different side of the game than what academy would, or even being in trainings with first team, second team. It's just slightly different in that regard. And so there were some areas of my game in which I had to adjust, strengthen, change, adapt to, in order to be successful. And I think like in possession was something that took a little bit of time, um, because you just have to learn to be playing for a new team, having a different back four in front of you than what I've honestly played with for the past 8, 9 years of my life. Um, and so the changes that you would expect going from playing for the same team for 8 or 9 years to a new team that you've never played for were all there. But I honestly think the transition was as easy as possible because the coaches equipped me to be ready for that in every regard.
And then for you, you collected some accolades this postseason, some recognition across, both freshmen, some breaking some records at UDEL. How do you, obviously it's a team game, but is that kind of a nice little nod like, hey, I had a great season, but there's more to it because it's a team sport at the end of the day. You want to be successful with your teammates.
Yeah, it definitely is nice and it is exciting, and a fun little thing to motivate me a little bit more. And it's something that definitely motivates me to compete. But I don't think it has anything to do, with honestly just my performances and stuff like that. I genuinely think that it comes from the team and the fact that they would show up every day and compete, day in, day out. But I am honestly a little bit disappointed because I think our team could have been recognized better, because it feels as though we're that close to being really recognized as a team in the way that it feels as though our team should do or is deserving. Um, and so, yes, those things are nice and they are nice individually, but I do think our team deserves more. And honestly, that's what is motivating me more than anything for this next season.
And then recently you got a really great opportunity getting to go with the Philadelphia Union's first team to Spain during preseason. So can you talk about that experience and what you took away from that time with the club?
Yeah. Um, Yeah, that was a really cool experience. And I think it goes back again, like I talked about earlier, the connections that Delaware has built with the union. They've been huge and they have been working in my favor, thankfully. Um, and so that experience, it definitely gave me a different perspective. And that's the way that I've begun to describe that trip because, yes, I've played with first team quite often in trainings and, stuff like that, but nothing quite like living with those guys for a couple weeks straight, training with those guys day in, day out. And really like you just sense the culture differently. Um, and so those opportunities really opened my eyes, one, to different attributes of my game, which I want to see get better, in order to be able to compete and play the best soccer that I can play. But also opened my eyes to the alternate side of the game of soccer, which is that it's like a livelihood. And so you see these guys who are much older than me, and they've been doing this for much longer. The way they carry themselves, honestly, the way their outlook on soccer is something that had an impact on me. And so that trip was just a super cool opportunity to be there with them, from both a soccer perspective and off the field. And it allowed me to come back into this space at Delaware and really have a different outlook both on the field and off the field, the way I carry myself, the way I interact with my friends and all that stuff. And honestly, it just makes me not take anything for granted being here, because this time in soccer, at least college soccer, can be very fickle. And who knows what a pro career could look like because that can be far longer than whatever 4 years you have in college.
And last question from us. heading into 2026, you said you wish your team this year would have gotten some more accolades. What has been the focus? I assume have you guys started spring ball yet?
Yeah. We started training as soon as we got back to school.
So, like, what's the
Games.
focus? Sorry to cut you off there. What's
No,
the
you're good.
focus for this spring and then even into next fall?
Yeah, I think the focus, honestly, it feels like we haven't skipped a beat since the fall, honestly, and it doesn't feel like there's much of a difference between our focuses from the fall and the focuses in the spring, but it's honestly just pushing to the next level of everything in every area of our game. And I think that comes down to bringing new players in, how they help us, and helping them buy into our game model. But I think the focus for the team is bettering that game model in every regard. And so I think out of possession, there's been a lot of focus, but also in possession. And so it's working on different um, ways to press, working on different ways to counter press, all those things, just so that our team can buy into our game model in a better way, and ultimately be on the same page. Because I think that's what it comes down to: is if we can get 11 guys doing the same exact thing, working for the same goal, then we're going to be stronger, unified than separate. And that those things just take time, and getting players like me who are younger, a little bit less experienced, more experience. Um, and understanding the game model so that we can all be more unified in what we're working for.